Hey, thanks for joining us in the Idea Lab. I'm Neely McQueen, and I'm here with Jim Burns, president of Homeward.
Right.
For those of us who don't know what Homeward is, tell us a little bit about what that is.
Homeward started as a youth ministry, helping youth workers. Today we help more parents, and we focus on strong marriages, confident parents, empowered kids, and healthy leaders.
That's great. That's great. There's this conversation right now in youth ministry about partnering with parents or family-based youth ministry. Is that a trend? Is that a fad? Is it going to go, or is it going to stay?
Well, I think it started as a fad because all of a sudden it was the new thing, the next thing. But along the way, all of us in here started realizing that about 65% of the kids who were in our youth group were leaving church after they graduated from high school, and all of a sudden studies started showing that there was a 300% better chance if they had faith conversations in the home. So now all of us have to take it seriously. We don't know how to do it. There's not an easy program, but the truth is that we've got to figure it out. And so I don't think it's a fad. It actually started way back in Deuteronomy when probably the very first scripture that Jesus ever heard was Mary holding him, reciting what we call the Shemats in Deuteronomy. And it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." But then it says, live it out, and then you impress it on your children. So they were doing it then, and then we sort of got away from it. I've been in youth ministry a long time, longer than some of these people were born. And we probably missed it because we didn't talk enough about it. It's now sort of coming back. When I speak on this at things like this, it used to be kind of around a table. Today it's, a larger workshop because people are trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting conversation because I see the importance of it in my youth ministry.
Yep.
But what becomes the tricky situation is when there's parents who don't really care about spiritual formation.
Yeah.
So how do you invite those parents into that conversation when you really do want to build a family-based youth ministry?
Well, actually, you're always going to have parents who don't care. And we have to figure that out. I was one of those people. My parents weren't, I'm first generation Christian. My parents could have cared less if I was at church or not. They weren't bad people. They just didn't care. They weren't going to give any faith conversations. So fortunately for me, I had a youth pastor who spoke into my life. And, he mentored me. And so we still have to continue to do mentoring and things like that and actually teach people like I was how you do family as a Christ follower. But the fact is that some parents do care. And we have a phrase at Homeward that says, when you reach the family, you reach the world. I think it's one of the most often missed issues of the church. I'm not talking just about youth ministry, but the whole church, that we miss being a place where people look at in our community and go, wow, if I wanted my family to succeed or if I had crisis in my family, I'd go to the church. A lot of times they don't even think about the church. So I think we can do something about that and make a big difference.
Yeah. You talk a lot about having faith-based conversations in the family. How do we as youth workers help families start those conversations?
Well, you got to give them the resources because most families have no clue how to do that. They feel awkward about it. Even people who were raised in the church aren't sure how to do it, or they do the lecture preaching thing, and that definitely doesn't work. So I think we have to find resources for them. I tell a lot of parents that when they're looking for this stuff, I say, go to your youth worker and just use some of the same stuff that they use in youth group. Go to your children's pastor if they have younger kids and make that happen. Will it be perfect? No. Is it awkward sometimes? Sure. But even awkward attempts to have faith conversations in the home, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, definitely. How can we as youth workers come alongside single parents or maybe grandparents who are raising their kids or raising their grandkids?
Yeah, fascinating enough because, the family isn't oftentimes what my family is. I've been married to Kathy for 39 years. I got 3 daughters. We have a dog, that kind of a thing. And so 2 different questions, really. We've got to make sure that we're helping single parents. Some of the finest parents in the world are single parents, but they would all agree that it's easier when there's 2. You can play good cop, bad cop. You and Josh can play good cop, bad cop. Kathy and I can play good cop, bad cop, where, when you're a single parent, you can't. You got to do this, all the same sex education, with the same, with different sex or whatever it is.
Right.
But the truth is you got to come alongside them, but you've also got to encourage them like crazy to have kind of their own set of people who can help them with that. And I think that's where youth ministry comes in a big time. I found as a youth pastor back in the old days that I could actually come alongside some of the guys, especially of where they were living with a single mom and not by any means replace dad, but give kind of that insight and input. And I found that those guys were really drawn more to me and I was drawn to them because I could play a little bit of that role. That doesn't take the place of parents, though. Now, you mentioned grandparents, Neely, and it's fascinating because the percentage is growing and growing of grandparents who are raising kids. And yet, in 1940, I don't think too many of us, I wasn't even around then, but in 1940, 70% of the homes in America had grandparents living with them. Today it's 2%. So there's not that many happening, but more grandparents are now raising the kids because their own children, have done drugs or they're a mess or whatever it is. Sometimes it's not just that they've done drugs or a mess, but for other reasons. But we find that more and more grandparents are coming to the Homeward.com site. More of them are listening to a radio broadcast that I do. More and more coming to our seminars because they're the primary focus. The other aspect of grandparenting is that we find that if parents aren't doing the faith conversations, grandparents can and will. So sometimes the youth workers got to be in really giving resources to grandparents as well and kind of getting them excited about it. They tend to influence their grandkids, sometimes even more than mom and dad.
That's an interesting. I actually just had a conversation this week with a grandparent regarding their granddaughter, and their concerns with some of the literature that she was choosing.
Right.
And they're, having this conversation about Kindle and Amazon and
Right.
things that they didn't even think they would have to have. And so to be able to come alongside them.
Social networking. I mean, you got to teach grandparents. This is something. Well, not grandparents now. Are Facebook people, although teens aren't.
Right.
But when it comes to other things, some Twitter, Instagram, whatnot. Grandparents, we got to teach them how to be students of the culture. We actually have to teach parents how to be students of the culture.
Right.
There's some young youth workers out there that go, I don't have teenagers. I mean, how can I help parents? Well, frankly, they know a lot more about culture, and parents need desperately to understand culture. How does Miley Cyrus fit in terms of relating and influencing a generation of kids without just griping about her?
Right.
But how is she influencing? What is that impact? One of the things we have to understand is that the greatest influence spiritually of kids is mom by far. Dads are second. They need to kind of buck it up. But third is actually grandparents, interestingly enough. Then aunts and uncles, then friends, then the church. So, a lot of us, we influence a lot of people. That wouldn't be the case with some of the people we have in our youth ministry, but we're way down the list.
Yeah.
So what we can do is not just influence students, but we can influence those other influencers by giving them the kind of faith conversations, helping them with a family devotional, stuff like that, just finding stuff and getting it out to people. And you'll never hit everybody, but if you hit a small group, you'll at least get the ball rolling. And then when they talk about how it's positive for them, then they'll tell the others, and that's really a better way than us trying to push it down their throats.
And I know you don't want to advertise, or you're not doing that, but I'm curious, is there like family devotions on Homeward?
Yeah.
We could get resources there for family devotions.
Yeah, Doug Fields and I send out over 7 million a year, and you just pick it up. It's free. It's at homeward.com. You can sign up. You can actually sign up for 3 things that help parents. One is the Monday through Friday devotional. I write it on Monday. Doug writes it on Wednesday, and other youth worker types actually write it the other days. And then secondly, we send out a culture brief every Friday. It's awesome. It's incredible. And it just magically appears. It takes about 3 minutes to read, but it's helping youth workers kind of know a lot of this stuff, but it's helping parents think through some of the things of the culture.
Right.
And then we also send out, just went out a parent newsletter called the Parent Update. I think there's another name to it too. We call it Parent Update. That goes out and people can actually, this is a great thing about youth ministry, is people can actually take it and then pass it on, make it their own, kind of pass it on. And Doug and I write that material.
That's great. Okay, one final question and kind of a hot topic. There's a lot of debate out there about, families, intergenerational, that's so essential, that's so important, get rid of youth group.
Right. Oh, I know. I'm not for that. There's some pretty famous youth workers going around right now saying, if I was God, I would fire everybody in youth ministry today and rehire them as doing family ministry or whatever, and that you just cancel youth group, cancel children's ministry, put everybody in the church. I wouldn't do that at all. I think kids need to be with kids, but I do believe strongly in intergenerational. I think you can do both, and I think somebody like Kara Powell and some of the others are doing a much more effective job of saying, no, keep youth ministry going. They need their peers. There's negative peer pressure, but there's also positive peer influence. I mean, my kids who had some of this stuff happening in the home, they didn't want to hang out with us all the time at church or whatever. But at the same time, seeing that intergenerational, like for me, not being raised in the church, some of my mentors were moms and dads of kids in the church. So I had to interact with them. And I think one of the problems is that kids become Christians at church, especially the kind of that aren't raised in the church. They have no relationship with the church. They have a relationship with the youth group, so they don't get integrated in the life of the church, and we see them leaving afterwards. So we're going to try to keep them around. Then we've got to be able to, well, you can't replace the parents, but you can give them some adult role models that make a big difference.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks again for joining us
pleasure.
this morning, Jim. Thanks for joining us here at the Idea Lab. Stick around. There'll be more things happening here.